Yes, still on this year, this day, this morning on ITV, your station of choice and your program of choice. I am Ebenezer Oyetakin with the program Nationalism and You. And we are having on seat a distinguished guest to examine the trending new clamor for restructuring. Restructuring. How much of our concerns will it resolve? What nature, what character of restructuring do we need? We are having Dr. Emeka Okengwu, a dynamic personality, a multifaceted man in development issues, and a member of Vision 2021 to 2024 development strategy, and even it extends to Vision 2050. Dr. Emeka Okengwu.
Pleasure.
My mentor.
Pleasure.
I remember when I was the national president of Nigeria Youth Organization. I'm getting old now.
Everybody is.
You were one of the people that put me and then Engineer Tasio Mohammed regime through on how we should take off. Yes. And when we took off, we succeeded. Beyond any youth national organization in Nigeria, we succeeded to put Nigeria Youth Organization in more than 62 countries in the world. Yes. You are welcome.
It is also good to celebrate your consistency.
Now, Dr. Emeka, restructuring. This clamor kept on reoccurring, particularly when we are getting closer to election years. What is your take on this?
Well, I think we should put a definition to restructuring, because if you don't understand restructuring, you might not get it well. What are we restructuring? All right. They say the cloak doesn't make the monk. The hood does not make the monk. All right. So that you remove your cloth now and wear a doctor's clothes. It does not make you a doctor. Okay. What makes you a doctor is training and your capacity. So we're talking about the human being. So whatever it is that you want to talk about restructuring, you must be able to look at that human element. And I like your program. It says nationalism and you. The end word of this program is you. What is your role in this thing you call nationalism? And it is in the context of nationalism that you can now begin to talk about restructuring or restructuring or right-sizing. Okay, so for me,
I love those words.
A lot of people who say restructuring, I say, okay, define what you mean by restructuring. Is it state creation? How does that now solve the problem? Is it creating more local governments? How does that solve the problem?
Is it reverting to 1963 Constitution?
So you see, whatever it is you do, and I say to them now, based on what data do you want to do this restructuring? But if you're talking about governance and administrative structures, okay, that can be able to now help what you call the ease of governance, then you begin to narrow the conversation. You now begin to narrow it to what you call responsibilities. You now begin to narrow it to what you now say, how you can be able to make, administration a little more flexible. Now, based on what you might call your new realities, technological realities, okay, and then these new, what you call the post-COVID realities. Ebenezer, my brother, then you can begin to now discuss this conversation. Okay, way back in those days, you probably would have had people carrying lights, for us to be able to be on set. You'd have had big microphones in our faces. Now we are mic'd, nobody sees them. If that is restructuring, then we are making sense.
Very well.
Is that not so?
Very well.
Okay, so you must be able to put it in the context, okay, of an output. You just don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, we need to restructure. And the first question will be, to what end? And what are you restructuring for?
What is it intended to achieve?
Yeah, so if it's me, if you now say to me, okay, from this little explanation you give, what do you think we should be looking at? And I said to you, you should be looking at those things that can be able to make administration, okay, and then the synergies between the national and the sub-nationals a little more easier and less, rancorous. And what would this be? It is for us to be able to look at what you call the exclusive list and the concurrent list. Okay, those things that have been left to be exclusive to government at the federal level to be able to do. Can they still do it, considering that they are only operating with 52% of a national, income? Now, is it possible in the light of what you call socio-economic, socio-cultural, socio-political, okay, even social-religious realities on the ground, for them to be able to now look at the 48% that is being, disbursed or spent at the subnational levels and see how they can be able to now align some of these factors or variables or programs left exclusively to government at the national level, and then you're able to now find a way you can now develop some kind of, stronger synergies at the subnational. Do you have to carry placard for that to be done?
No. Dr. Emeka, explicit as your explanation is, now looking at the clamor for restructuring, just like you ask, what are we restructuring? We have federal system, we have state system, that is governorates, then we have local government, 774 of them. But as it is today, in governance, the local government is totally passive, and it is not responding to the constitutional intendment of its creation. And I do not see this as a problem of, what do you call it, structure, but a problem of human's attitude. Human's attitude, where the governors caged the local government and they even refused to allow them to go through democratic electoral process. They appoint or anoint any, what do you call it, caretaker committee chairman and things of that nature. Is this the way to go? Well, are these not running contrary to the placard carrying for restructuring?
No, that's what I'm saying. That you see, we need. I didn't say I'm against restructuring, but you need to put a definition to what you want to achieve. Now, what you have just simply talked about is how do you now strengthen the relationship, okay, between the governors and the governed, okay? And are you going to do this by looking at the administrative structures or the laws that now make these things look as if, there are some people who are now sitting on other people's necks? Now, remember that part of what the administration of President Buhari had done is to say, okay, give local governments their funds directly. Remember that there was such
exactly.
And
he even went ahead and said, let there be autonomy for state judiciary and legislature.
Beautiful. Now you see, we are governed by what you call statutes. Okay, if the president wishes that, and it is not in our statutes, then it can be implemented. But if it's in our statutes and somebody is negating it, then you cannot apply the full weight of the demands of the law on the person and begin to set examples. Okay, you see, I think the greatest challenge we have in Nigeria is access to justice or our justice system. Now, you see, 80% of the times when people talk about justice, the first thing that enters into your head is the law courts. But you see, the law courts are the apex of the justice trajectory. Okay, the first is the people. Then the second are now the law enforcement agencies. So the moment you have, the law enforcement agencies of your country doing the needful, preparing those case files that can now allow you to go to plead for justice or get justice at the temple of justice, then you have a society that has protected you. And that is why you can now be able to now use the mantra, nobody is above the law. Now, it is something that can also, when you say nobody is above the law, and then people now begin to behave lawlessly, and they are getting away with it, and there is no enforcement. But strange enough, you will find out that it is the failure of the civil societies that is making people behave as if they are above the law. In other climes, the people who There are people they call investigative journalists that will spend 3 years, 4 years chasing a matter. It's all over. Okay, you now have civil societies that will make certain, like the NYO that you led, that you're put in 52 countries, as young as you were then. As young as you were then. This was about 20-something years ago, and you've remained consistent, Ebenezer. Do you know why you've remained consistent? Because if you now were in government, and you were now obeying what the statutes and making certain that every other person obeyed it. So it is one thing for you to be able to have laws. It is also another thing for you to be able to enforce it. And those who must insist on the right things to be done, okay, are those who are the citizens of that country. And this is where the CSOs and the CBOs and the NGOs, all put together as civil society must come in. But when you now have the civil society getting involved in partisan politics, what do? So, like I said in the beginning of this program, what is most important is that it is what you said at the beginning, nationalism. And
you.
It is all about you. What you want is what you get.
Thank you very much. Let me vary it this way. Our civil society, both the organized one and the communal ones, are they holding our governmental system, both particularly at the subnational levels, are they holding them accountable as it should?
Beautiful. You see, this is where advocacy comes in. This is where you must know. When you go to America or any of these other, not even America, some developing countries, the first thing the citizen says to you is, I know my rights. The moment you have Nigerians to begin to say, I know my rights, and enforce those rights. Okay? Now, it takes, I don't want trouble. Please, just go. If somebody comes and says, oh, okay, we're going to book you for an infringement. Okay? Now, usually in other countries, when you do infringement, that is how government gets revenue. Okay? They're very happy to pay, and they're able to learn a lesson. But in this case, the man says, okay, so I'll take 500, I beg, leave Mecca, they go. Now, who is guilty? Is it you that failed, that has committed an offense, which you should be sorry for, and then committed another offense by giving bribe, and then coming back to say that the police are corrupt? Am I making some sense here?
Exactly.
So until you begin to grow that national consciousness to say, okay, you know what, I'm sorry I've done this. Okay? But okay, I'll pay my bills, I'll pay my rights. So that the moment people begin to see that there is reward, okay, for being a good citizen, and there's also punishment for infringing on the law, and all of us begin to now work towards this, it becomes very difficult, for you to now have a system where there's so much brazen corruption. Okay, there's so much brazen, marching on people's rights. Because these civil societies, Ebenezer, my brother, can actually now begin to stand up for the voiceless. This is what it's all about. But you don't run with the hare, and then hunt with the hounds. In the morning, you're civil society. In the evening, you're a political party. You're supporting this candidate. You're supporting the other candidate. And then there's confusion everywhere. So if we're going to be building a Nigeria of tomorrow, I like what it is you have started to do. We must begin to ask people, do you know what your rights are? Now, when they caught you, a lot of people drive out of their houses and they don't have their car papers. And then they say, oh, the police were molesting them. You go out of your house, you don't have fire extinguishers in your car. All those demands that you're supposed to have, do you have them?
Do you sell your vote?
Again.
Do you sell your vote? Do you participate in the electoral process? Do you play tawdry to one political?
Do you even pay your tax?
Somewhere? Do you pay your tax? This is nationalism and you. Again, in the context of nationalism and you, it appears that this country as we have it today, there is so much agitation from left to right. There is so much discontent, particularly among our youth. And that much was emphasized recently by the Oni of Ife, that we are not engaging our youth constructively to give them a sense of belonging. How can we regenerate this?
I'll tell you this. And this is one of the easiest things that we can do. It's so easy that it is annoying. This is a country that has 86 million hectares of arable land. Each time I have an opportunity to discuss programs like this, I bring it in. 86 million arable land. Less than 10% of it are in any commercial use, either for agriculture or agro-allied. This is a country that has, in every local government, one natural resource or the other. We don't have one mine. We don't have any mine operating anywhere in this country. And a typical mine can take up to between 10,000 to 300,000 people, both directly and indirectly. Ajaokuta alone has the capacity at the stage it is now to employ 50,000 people.
Wow.
The housing estate in Ajaokuta is the biggest housing estate in Africa. At the time it was operating, it had 5,000 houses in it. Okay? 86 or more than that percent of those houses today abandoned and decaying. So, if you are not able, how do you engage these youths if you are not creating skills and you're not creating jobs that they can be able to do? And it does not have to be public jobs. We are busy bringing in everything that we are wearing, that we are eating, that we are drinking from outside Nigeria, including what me and you are drinking or wearing. Even if you are wearing an agbada, the material comes from Bangladesh or China or India, including our shoes. So if you do not begin to now look at your youth and then plan your education against your resource development patterns, and it is very easy to do so. A lot of these youths are very, very talented and skilled. Okay, Tanko was talking about the entertainment industry. Nollywood in Nigeria became next to Hollywood only 10 years after operating it. There is no African country you go to, tune on a television, and they don't know African Nigerian stars or Nigerian movies. Dint of hard work. We don't even have a film village in Nigeria. So these are to just tell you that it is not about these youths, it's about the frustration. I mean, how can you in a country where you have 70% of the people living under the breadline? And can I tell you this? At least half of those 70% are university graduates. You have a lot in your house. Your wife's brothers and sisters are there, and you think they're happy waking up in the morning to wash your cars?
Sitting at home doing
and
nothing.
Sitting at home, and then you probably have an argument with their sister, and then somebody's trying at somebody, and they think it's because they're in the house, they're uncomfortable. They will do anything to get out of that situation. So what is important for us to do as a country is to be able to get proper statistics and proper data. I was promoting a program, and I said, listen, everybody talks about cattle. Nobody talks about forage. We need to be producing a minimum of 500,000 metric tons of forage for cattle, which is one of the largest economies. If I start that conversation now, we'll end by 12 o'clock. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is so much. We have 200 million people to feed. Ebenezer, I have not seen any industrial farm. There's no plantation anymore. People have moved away from plantations and are going into belts. You run from here to Maiduguri and you're running through empty land.
You are an expert on infrastructural development. How good have we been getting it?
Well,
so far?
we have been doing, there are two ways to develop infrastructure. Either you make it demand-driven, which we are not doing, or you make it political, which unfortunately has become the bane of our infrastructure development. They make you governor today, you want to do what they call legacy projects. That's not how the development runs. Development runs against demands. You must be able to now plan your integrated infrastructure to be able to, and that's what I'm saying to you, that all we need to do is to look at what this exclusive list is allowing government to do and what they are doing at the concurrent list. The moment you adjust it, okay, and then you begin to now have clear administrative structures, okay, of how you can now interlink, infrastructure, because there's nothing called national infrastructure. It is infrastructure. Okay, but because you now have what you call the ones at the federal government road, state government road, federal government highway, state government highway, federal government projects, no, it should be projects for the development of a Nigerian nation. I think that is where, we are not now interlinking and synergizing policies. The agri policy of Nigeria should be one policy. Okay? All the commissioners of agriculture should have a common ground where they are talking with the Minister of Agriculture so that they can begin to develop what we call national outputs. All right? Now, the same thing with the commissioners of infrastructure, the same thing with the commissioners of economic development. Is that happening? The only time you see them aggregate together is when they probably come to take their
Dr. Okengu, is our national constitution the supreme law of the country? Is it an inhibition to our national development?
Yes, it is.
To what extent?
To the extent that it's, like I said to you, it's created a lot of governance levels that needs to be synergized. Okay, it's a document that can be readjusted. It's a document that needs to be spoken to again. Okay, so that he can be able to bring out.
And that is going around the country now.
Well, that is one way to do it. For me, I would have said, can we just sit over that document and probably, do something new? Okay, if you were to ask me, all right, I would say let the targets be to be able to now get something that review that document holistically. Okay, because the moment you do it in parts and parts, you might get this part right and you might get this part wrong. But if you put that document and do a proper autopsy, okay, and say, okay, page by page, okay, not section by section, not because people are agitating. No, let us be able to look at this thing holistically. Is it able? 20 years ago, if you could work, the burden he has given on the federal government, can they still carry it 20 years thereafter with the burgeoning population? And then remember that the population of this country are actually, like you said earlier, in the local government, including our president lives in a local government.
Exactly.
Every state is in a local government. All right? So if you're not able to know that, we should be able to look at that document in a very holistic manner.
Do you, Dr. Emeka, are you concerned, or do you have the fear that the trending advocacy for restructuring, I support restructuring. I support the call for restructuring, but I want it defined. Do you not fear that restructuring can be applied to mean a power grab? We cannot have access to the center. Let us draw it down to us. And when you draw it down to yourself, it continues to unleash the same poverty in the midst of plenty, the same, what do you call it, stretching the people from participatory governance and things of that nature.
Like I said to you, Ebenezer, my brother, it's a very, this thing we call a big problem is really very little. Okay, it is having the right people to talk. And who are the right people? The right people are the people. Now, it will amaze you. Yes, you support restructuring. You want everybody in Nigeria to be happy, but you want to be Nigerian. All right? And in most big nations that have populations like us, okay, I'll give you a very typical example with America. They are called the United States. It's important you listen to that word states. That's your underlining. United States. And in that United States, they have what they call their federal laws. And then states are now allowed to be able to now keep their own laws. Okay? But when it comes to being that American law, there's a murder, FBI comes in, state police takes away. There is a kidnap, FBI comes in, state police steps down. So they know everybody has a level, has a synergy. Now you come to United Kingdom. A lot of people do not know that Ireland is part of United Kingdom, that Great Britain is part of United Kingdom. The same thing with Canada. So it's all about, like I said to you, now with the socio-economic and socio-political, socio-cultural realities in Nigeria. But God is such an amazing, I revere him. This is us the biggest in the whole world, with every natural resource known to man. We have more PhDs as Nigerians than you have in the whole of Europe put together. Go and check the statistics. We are doing great. There is no major invention in the world. There is no Nigerian you find in there. No major technological breakthrough.
Well, again, I have this deep concern that Our democracy appeared to have flourished for 20 years, but we kept on agitating for one thing or the other, right from the first one. The agitation led to President Olusegun Obasanjo instituting that political conference. Then it came down to Jonathan, another political conference. If you look at all the structure we are talking about, the structure of governance that are in place in Nigeria, from federal to the local government, they seem to have been defined by the military. The military created the 36 states. And when the National Assembly was leading, constitutional amendment and discussions from state and regional basis, I remember that a lot of people came up with demand for more creations of states and things of that nature. Maybe those are part of the restructuring they are talking about. The civilian government in our democratic setting has not been able to add any tangible structure or nullify that which needed to be nullified and things of that nature. What is the problem?
You've just hit the nail. You know, when you have the overload, what you have in your constitution is actually a mixture of military edicts, decrees, amendments, and all that. So it's a beautiful document when you look at it on the surface, but operating it now begins to present some very big challenges. It's become like the white elephant and the three blind men. So whatever it is that suits you, you can actually clutch on there, and it gives you some kind of, leverage. Now, I'll tell you something, and there's something people forget, that Nigeria came together, and that's why I mentioned United States of America, as federating units.
Federating units, yes.
That agreed that there was going to be unity in diversity. And this is why we took what we call the federal structure. Until people understand it, that what we are now looking for is now going towards what we call the true federalism. If you put a true meaning to true federalism, then what we should be doing is to now interrogate all these demands. In fact, there should have been only one agenda on all these national conferences. Are the federating units working towards true federalism, and what do we need to do to have true federalism? And I respect Ahmadu Bello. He says it. Let us find those things that make us, and then respect it. And the moment you respect those things, that makes us different, then our unity is stronger. Exactly. The culture I come from, you can hug somebody's wife in a particular manner, not directly. Maybe, you're allowed to make that contact. In some other cultures, you're not. In the cultures I come, you can come in and say, hey, where's your husband? Call him out. In some other cultures, you must be allowed in. Now, these are things that we must respect and we can learn from each other. And then we become a great country. And that's why I'm saying that those subnationals that have those, special or unique socio-cultural demands must be respected. And this is where the Constitution's right to religion, right to, what you call also self-determination, if you may. So anybody who says to you, restructure, please say to him, restructure what? I like the idea. You restructure your house to make it more livable. Okay? Right? When you're getting fatter, what do? You amend your clothes, right? Or when you're getting smaller, you reduce them so that it can fit. But it has to be a program.
Exactly.
Now, when you say restructure the country, it sounds a little bit ambiguous.
Ambiguous, yes.
But when you say restructure
that is the fear.
The country's administrative systems so that you can build more synergy, between the subnationals and the national, vis-a-vis our current realities, then we are having a conversation.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, our budget in, year out, what do we call it? Current expenditure at the rooftop, capital expenditures, even fighting for implementation. Whereas the entire thing about the recurrent expenditure will be totally evacuated and sometimes surpassed. How can this help infrastructural development that can crystallize sustainable development? You as a developmental expert.
I also said to you that part of the problem we have is that federal government has only 58% of the 100%, and they are putting it into national infrastructure.
Okay.
State governments have 48% of that 100%, and they say they are also putting it into infrastructure. Okay?
Are we seeing them?
Now, if you have a common purpose of infrastructure, okay, now what it simply means is that there should have been a meeting of minds in every national budget to say, out of the 30% we are allocating to infrastructure, and your own 30% we are allocating to infrastructure, we now have 60% as allocation to national infrastructure. All right? So if we're going to be building a road from here to Ogun State and to Lagos, it is not a federal road, it is a Nigerian road. Okay? So Kogi State, which is on the spoke, is contributing this. Ogun State is contributing this. This person is contributing this. This person is contributing this out of their 48%, added to the 52% that the federal government is holding. Ebenezer, you will have a road in a matter of 8 months.
Thank you very much. You know, that surprised me because many of our road projects kept on rolling from one budget to another, from one budget to another, year in, year out, and those roads are not manifesting. For example, the road from Abuja to Lagos has been under construction for more than 10 years going, and they are not.
So why should the federal government be constructing road that's passing Lagos, passing Ogun, and Ogun is not contributing? And the citizens are not contributing.
That's a very good thought. That's a very good thought. Now, we are rounding up because of time.
Yes,
we are rounding up because of time. I watched something yesterday, and that has to do with the question of reinventing national integrity, confidence in ourselves, and you mentioned it. Let us throw up those things that unite us and respect them, our divergence. Let's respect our divergence and things of that. I watched something, and it was also on this, our beautiful program, this morning on ITV. The Emir or Sheikh of Kano, yesterday, I believe the day before yesterday, paid a 2-day walking visit to the Omonoba Oko Apolopolo of Oba of Benin. And it was so beautiful. I was just imagining how much confidence that will generate between the two monarchs. And I said, how I wish our traditional rulers across the country can be doing this, particularly at this period when we need peace and security, when we need to regenerate the confidence, particularly of our youth in the system, and create some certain atmosphere of sublime peace. Because without peace, there can be no development and things of that nature. What is your advice to the nation?
Again, it's an administrative and legal matter. Right now, our royal fathers are under the local governments. And in your intro, you have said that the people are not even existing anymore. The Ooni of Ife, who is supposed to be heavy, is actually subjected to the authority of the local government.
So those things need constitutional. Now, I forgot to get you involved in this. Very good. We still have some little time to ride on. Dr. Emeka Okegwu, in your own words, what does, you know, in those days when they were fighting for the independence of African states, nationalism meant, yes, the love, devotion, and we want to do it our own way, and the rest of it. Today, what should nationalism mean to you and me?
Nationalism should mean that we are ready to die for a country that is doing everything and ready to protect us. This is the dream of America. America goes to war because of somebody who's been kidnapped, to show, not because of that person's life, but to show that America protects its own. Now, when you have a country that thinks you, dreams you. Look at Biden. Biden came into office and said, in my first 100 days of office, I'm going to make certain that a minimum of 200 million Americans are vaccinated. He's done it. So when he comes and says, I need 100 million Americans to go and defend American soil, 200 million people will step forward. So it's all about our social systems. It's all about social security, Ebenezer. Okay? It's all about making certain that no citizen goes hungry.
But this particular administration has been doing something. This social investment, is it in line with what you are talking about? The social investment program?
No, it's all about...
At various levels.
You must... I'll give it to them. Truly, President Buhari came into leadership at very tough times in Nigeria. But if I were to advise, I would say, don't do it piecemeal. Do it holistically, even if it needs to take a longer time. And what does doing it holistically mean? Have your data. Let us know who is poor, where he lives, what he does, what has made him poor, what education he has of every Nigerian. Every.
Holistic.
Every.
Like that.
If you have that statistics of every Nigerian, President Buhari, and this is why American presidents, can be able to pick up their phone and call Joe the plumber, and it becomes a national issue. You know why he's able to do that? Because he has a database of everybody who is in the country and where they're located. And this is why you also now build what you call your criminal database. It's also important that when you're thinking about the good, you must also think about those who don't want to be so good, or the ugly and the bad. And this you can only do with statistics.
Very well.
So if we have the appropriate data on citizenry, then again, that is one. Two, remember again, and I keep saying this for emphasis, that there has to be a synergy. President Muhammad Buhari needs to have, the instruments and data to be able to call any governor and say, my citizen in Yobe has gone to bed hungry. What's happening? Okay? What's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening here? I thought we agreed that XYZ was going to be happening. I've done my own bit. Why aren't you doing your own bit? And people can be called out. But he can't do this. He can't conjure it. He has to be driven by clear data. And if you don't have that synergy, and if the law doesn't allow him to do that prognosing, how does he do it? You see, because everybody looks up to, and each time they say, yes, the box stops as his table. I agree. But if the box stops as his table, does he have total control over what happens all over the country? Does he have any right or powers to be able to call a state assembly and say, no, I don't like the budget, it's not aligning with our national priorities?
Definitely.
Okay, scale it down or step it down.
That will negate the concept of separation of power.
So this is where the problem is. You're separating power, but you're not separating responsibility. Do you understand? Now they are loading the whole of the responsibility of 200 million people on the man, and he's supposed to be doing the magic with only 52% when you're holding 48% individually by pro rata. You understand why I say to you that there has to be synergy. A will where, you see, in those days, maybe in the line of your projects, I want you to go and try who does registration of birth and death. Do you even have, me and you, okay, at least us when we were born, the day you are born, you were registered in the general hospital or the local hospital that you were born. Those statistics were there. Now, what is the synergy even between the general hospitals, the private hospitals, the PACs, to be able to even get that register? Is it existing? If it's not, how do you now plan schools? How do you now plan infrastructure? How do you now plan jobs? So, you see, these things are cross-cutting, and there are things you just don't, and that's why each time people wake up and say, oh, because, I'm lucky I've not asked me about this agitation going all over the country. For me, it is not only misguided, it is happening because coercion happens to have, been one way people are now getting heard. But it's not supposed to be like that. The legal system is supposed to allow you to air your grievances, if you have any, through that process of law that allows you the liberty to be able to do it in a civil manner.
Yes, there is nothing wrong in agitation, but our agitation should not threaten the sovereignty and our collectivism. Because, like I tell people, before the amalgamation of Nigeria, and before Nigeria independence as a nation, when we come together as a nation, one country, Nigeria is a modern state, it's a modern nation state. There was no nation that we can refer to as Igbo nations, Yoruba nations, or Hausa nations. There were segmented chiefdoms in Igbo land, segmented chiefdoms and obership in Yoruba land, and segmented chiefdoms and emirate in the north. Most of these chiefdoms, Igbo chiefdoms, fight against themselves, overrun one another in the middle of the night, the killings and the rest of it, in order to take over and establish a stronger... The same thing happened in Yoruba land. Are our politicians deceiving us to think that now the solution to the Nigerian nation's multifaceted problems and security challenges is recourse to secession? I want to have a nation and that kind of a thing. So, what's your take on this?
Somebody actually said to me one time that I said, "What do you do?" And he says he's a politician. And I said, "Let me reply you with a story. When my father was alive, a young man had come and they were doing introduction. I said, "What do you do?" The man says, "I'm a businessman." My father says, "No, you're a thief." You tell me you're a trader and I trade in this. But for somebody to begin to wake up and say, "Oh, I'm a politician." There's no business called politician. But there is a process called politics that puts you into governance. So each time we blame our politicians and we leave the people who now make them politicians.
We bring the politicians, we leave the people who now make them politicians. You're going to do my affirmation. I will say, nationalism and you will respond. It is my duty and responsibility to build my nation. No one will build it for you. So, Dr. Emeka Okwengu, nationalism and you.
It is my duty, my very, very primary and total duty to build my nation.
Nice to have you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Hope you will avail yourself again.
It will be my privilege.
Thank you very much. It is still your darling station. Don't go away. ITV, certainly the best. We have just come to the ending of today's editions of Nationalism and You. Next week, Thursday, keep faith with us again. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.
Wow, beautiful one.